you have
Yeah.
everything has a dual behavior. Everything has a dual behavior. The hint that he took was from light itself, because light is behaving like a particle plus a wave, right? So
Yeah.
he made a guess that maybe matter, normal things that behave as particles, also have some wave nature to it. So for example, what he said was lambda is equal to h by p, he said, where lambda is equal to h by mv. How did he get a hint for that? Because he saw that energy of light was hc by lambda, right?
Yeah.
Correct. And then what he saw is E by momentum for a light wave can be written as E by C. Uh, E by C is the momentum of light, right? So, wait, I want to explain it in terms of this. So, E is equal to hc by lambda, and okay. So, if you write E as mc square, what will happen? Mc is equal to h by lambda. Oh, okay, yeah. So, if you write E as mc square, right? hc by
Yeah.
lambda, then you get mc is equal to h by lambda, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So think of mass of a photon and velocity of a photon. This looks like
Yeah.
momentum of a photon, no?
Hmm.
Yeah.
The momentum
Yeah.
of a photon was h by lambda, right?
Yeah.
So if momentum of a photon looks like h by lambda, then from here he is guessing that maybe momentum of a particle, any particle, is h by lambda, not just photon. You understand?
Hmm.
So because if you think of photons as particles, then you would have written momentum as mass into velocity, no?
Yeah.
And mass into velocity, as soon as you write that, right, then you get mc is equal to, in this case, mc square is equal to hc by lambda. So h by lambda you're getting for a photon,
Hmm.
right? Does
Yeah.
it make sense how we got mc is h by lambda? E is equal
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
mc square. Energy and mass are interlinked by Einstein's equation, right? So
Yeah.
now he got that momentum of a photon can be connected to h by lambda, and from there he took a guess that maybe not just light, every other particle also has some wavelength, which is wavelength is
Hmm.
h by p, right?
Yeah.
Now this wavelength lambda for normal particles like a car will turn out to be very tiny, because h is super tiny, no?
Yeah.
H is Planck's constant, which is 6.626 into 10 power minus
Yeah.
34, right? So when you divide by something of macroscopic dimensions, this becomes very tiny, really tiny, right? So now,
Yeah.
because this became so tiny, you don't notice that wavelength. So because that wavelength is negligible, you think of all of these macroscopic bodies as particles, right?
Yeah.
You understand? Wavelength
Yeah.
is so tiny that they can be assumed to be as particles. But for a electron, if you do the calculation for an electron, the wavelength is comparable to the size of the atom. Okay, you can do the calculation. So right now I want to make a different point, so I'm not doing the calculation right now. Electron, it is very easy to do the calculation, no guys? This is
Yeah.
m into v. M, mass of an electron, is 9.1 into 10 power minus 31. So immediately you see that 6.6 into 10 power minus 34 by 9.1 into 10 power minus 31 into velocity of an electron. Now, because you have done atomic structure, you know that velocity of an electron is quite high. It will be
Hmm.
2.18 into 10 power 6 into z by n. This is the formula.
Yeah.
2.18 into 10 power 6 into z by n. We will come to the derivation soon, but of the order of 10 power 6, right? Of the order of 10 power 6. So velocity is approximately 10 power 6, let's say. So what we get is 10 power minus 25, and here we get 10 power minus 9, right? So,
Yeah.
so of the order of 10 power minus 9, but the atom size is of the order of 10 power minus 10, right?
Hmm.
So look at the wavelength for an electron. The wavelength for an electron is almost as big as the atom itself, right? the
Yeah.
atom's diameter.
Yeah.
Right? So that means that now electron has become a very weird thing. Its position is not known very well. No, if electron is supposed to be
Yeah.
subatomic, but its wavelength is as big as the atom, right? Then do you know where it is in the atom now? You understand? If it is a wave,
Yeah.
it is distributed over that space. No, a wave is like
Yeah.
this. Wait, a wave is generally supposed to be like this. This is one wavelength, right? Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if electron is a wave, it is distributed over at least this much wavelength, no? And if
Yeah.
this is the entire size of the atom, then where is it actually? You don't know where it is, no?
Hmm.
Correct. So this leads us to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. But right now we will not worry about that. What I want to make a point here is electrons will behave as waves, and for an electron, the wave property will be relevant to the discussion, right? For us, our wavelength is not relevant because it's so tiny, right?
Yeah.
That we can ignore that effect. But for electrons, it will be quite relevant because we want to know the atomic structure. We want to know where electrons are, how they are, and all, so that we can predict chemical reactions, right? So now you have to account for electrons' wave-like properties. And now this thing was a theoretical point that Louis de Broglie had made. Basically, this was in his PhD thesis. Okay, so everyone when they write a PhD, they make a thesis, right? You guys know that, right? Everyone who makes a PhD, they have to do a dissertation and they have to propose some new research, and eventually they have to defend that dissertation, and that is how you become a doctor in something, right? So this was his PhD thesis. So it was completely theoretical, like nobody had done this before, and this he had just predicted maybe this is the case, right? And he had tried to defend this PhD thesis. Now what people did after that was did experiments to confirm or invalidate this thesis, right? No, scientists will not accept it on faith, right? They will do experiments to check this, right? So no, what experiments did people do? They took an electron, they took a lot of electrons and tried to do wave-like experiments. Like we earlier heard of this Young's double slit experiment and diffraction, right? So
Yes.
diffraction is a completely wave phenomena. Basically it means light, when it encounters a boundary, it can bend around corners, and here also you will see some light. If it is a wave, here there will not be completely dark. It will not be completely dark here.
Yeah.
Not completely dark. There will be some amount of diffused light that you will see in this whole region. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That is a common phenomena which you can understand. Right. If it was particle, it would have been straight. Right. Only point which will be bright will be this point. Right. But light does not behave like that. Light behaves like a diffraction pattern. So people were checking, okay, if he says that electron is a wave, and Louis de Broglie's prediction is it will have something like 10 power minus 9 meter wavelength, right? Approximately, right? So that is almost like visible light, right? Visible light is also some nanometers and all, right?
Yeah.
This is in the range of visible light. So if visible light is following diffraction, electron diffraction also we can check, right? We can check whether electrons, if you send a beam of electrons, whether they bend around corners, right?
Yeah.
And they checked that and they saw a diffraction pattern. Okay. They did this experiment and they saw a diffraction pattern. Electrons could also bend around corners. Okay. Once they saw this experiment was performed by some guy called Thomson again. This is a different Thomson. He is the son of J.J. Thomson. Okay. That was the point that I wanted to make. In 1897, J.J. Thomson discovered that electron was a particle, right?
Yeah.
And in 1930, his son Thomson discovered, I forgot his first name. He discovered that electrons behave as waves. He experimentally validated it. Electrons behave as waves because diffraction patterns, right? And both of them got a Nobel Prize. Okay. So the father got it for proving that electron is a particle, and the son got it for proving that it is a wave. You understand? So basically, the understanding is that quantum mechanics is slightly strange, and wave and particle are not rigid definitions. Like things can behave differently in different settings. Okay, and yeah. So basically, depending on the experiment, you will see light, electrons, everything behaving differently. So far, what we have seen is I digressed from here, but we discovered Louis de Broglie's principle in the middle. So I wanted to talk about J.J. Thomson and his experiment. Electron was a particle. Now what happened is he found electrons, other people discovered protons. So now, and one more person, Chadwick, discovered neutrons. So now you have atomic structure. Each atom is composed of neutrons, protons, electrons. This has plus charge, this is negative charge, this is neutral. So then there was Rutherford. Rutherford did his scattering experiment, famous scattering experiment, right? And scattering experiment gave us a very crucial hint to the structure of an atom, that most of the alpha particles went on straight, right?
Yeah.
So the entire atom is mostly composed of empty space. Okay. The entire positive charge was concentrated in a tiny region which was called the nucleus. Okay. Because only in that tiny region did alpha particles undergo large deviations, right? Or they even rebounded back. Large deviations happened when only a few of the alpha particles hit this, right? Every other alpha particle went on straight, right? Almost 95% of the alpha particles went straight ahead. And the others had some tiny deviations, and some of them, very few of them, had large deviations. Okay. This is 4-2 helium, that is an alpha particle that is coming, and gold nucleus is there, right?
Yeah.
Everyone understands the scattering experiment, no? Why are they being deviated? Because positive charge +2 and positively charged nucleus. So positive charge, positive will repel. Okay. So they will repel each other and it wants to go away. That's why it is turning this side. Okay. And sometimes it is going back even, right? Correct? But most others are going straight through. So this gives us a structure of the atom like a planetary model where protons and neutrons are in the center and electrons are orbiting, right?
Yeah.
This is the planetary model of the atom. This is Rutherford's prediction. But there was a problem. What was the problem?
The electrons will just sink into
Mm-hmm. There is a serious problem with Rutherford's model. It fits the experiments of it fits the understanding of Rutherford's experiment, but it fails on one more criteria, that atoms are stable. Atoms are actually found to be stable. There's no problem with atoms. Like they continue to exist for billions of years, right? But in Rutherford's model, they will not survive even a second because of Maxwell. Maxwell was a guy in the 1860s. He figured out the electromagnetism, basically the entire subject. He figured out charged particles moving around. Charged particles, if they are accelerated ever, charged particles, electron, which if it is accelerated, it will emit energy. It will lose energy. So this was a prediction from Maxwell's equation. So what we will, in physics, we will be studying at least 2-3 of them, actually all of the Maxwell's equations we'll encounter. Okay. So there are 4 Maxwell's equations. We'll study that in 12th standard physics. Right now, I don't need to worry about it so much. But one of the predictions of Maxwell's equations is that any accelerated charge will give out energy. Okay. Now, if the accelerated charge is giving out energy, here an electron is moving in a circle, right? Its velocity is changing constantly, right?
Yeah.
Because the direction of the velocity is changing, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the direction of the velocity is changing, there is technically an acceleration on the electron. No, acceleration on the electron, then that means it should be radiating out energy. And if it radiates out energy, it is losing energy, and then it will lose energy and collapse in smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller orbits and finally hit the nucleus.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If the moon starts losing energy, then it will start coming closer and closer to the earth. Okay. The reason moon is at a fixed orbit is because it is going at a constant speed without losing any energy. Right? Everyone understands that intuitively. No, if you don't give enough energy, then things will fall to the earth. Right? Correct. Makes sense, no? Everyone is clear on that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Rutherford's model has a problem now because atoms are stable. No electrons are collapsing into the nucleus. But according to his model, they will not be stable. It's a problem because Maxwell's electromagnetism is definitely correct. Like people have experimentally verified it for 50 years, and they have been like, now it is 150 years, and there are no violations. Almost everything is correct here. Okay. So actually, it is so correct that when Einstein was trying to figure out relativity, right? Einstein had a problem. He was trying to figure out whether what will light behave as? And he was trying to understand whether what will be the speed of light if you look at it from a frame which is moving, right? Basically, I will just quickly discuss this. So there is a light wave, right? Photon is going, right? Speed of light is c, 3 into 10 power 8 meter per second, right? Correct.
Yeah.
I am an observer. I am a stationary observer. I see a light wave passing. I see the speed is this. Okay. Now I am in a car now. Car is going at 100 meter per second, right? What will be the speed of light that I see? That is the question. Okay. If I am standing still, I see speed of light as this, right? And if I am moving in a car at 100 meter per second, what is the speed of light that I see? Normally, you would have said, right? That makes sense, right? That is the normal understanding of light that people had, that Newton had proposed. Newton was Newtonian mechanics. Everything in mechanics was from Newton, and that is what Newton would have said. Okay. But if you say that, no, then there are problems. Then it's between Newton and electromagnetism. Whether it's either this is right or this is right, there is a problem with light. So either this is right or this is right. So Einstein predicted that even in a moving frame, the speed of light that you see is going to be still c. So no matter which frame you choose, no matter how you are moving, no matter which frame you choose, you will always see photon traveling at the speed of light only. C. Basically, that is the theory of relativity. That is the theory of relativity, that speed of light is going to be constant irrespective of the frame that you choose to see it in. Okay. See, normal mechanics, Newton's mechanics would predict c minus 100, no? But actually what you will see is still c. So that is now weird, totally weird stuff now, right?
Yeah.
So because how is that making any sense, right? So what Einstein predicted was, there are things like length and time are also not immutable things. They can also change. Okay. So length, distance, and time, these things are also dependent on the frame. So these things depend on the frame, not like earlier what you would have thought was space is fixed, right? Space is fixed, time is fixed. Nothing can change that. That is what Newton thought, that everything happens in space and time keeps passing by, and nobody can tamper with these things, right? And basically events happen in space, and time passes by, and nothing changes in space and time. But what Einstein figured out was that actually length that you see depends on how fast you are going, depends on your speed. depends on the observer. Okay, so there is something called length contraction. If you're going very fast, the distance that you see is lesser, length contract. And if time dilation, if you're going very fast, the time that you see, time slows down for you. So if you travel near the speed of light, you will not age. Your age will remain the same. You'll live forever. But traveling at the speed of light is not possible. So yeah. So time dilation and length contraction happens, and basically speed of light, because of length and time itself changing, if you are moving at this speed, then speed of light remains constant. Speed of light would be what? Length by time, no? Right? Distance covered by the photon by time, but the distance covered by a photon by time, the distance that you are measuring from here is not the same as the distance you are measuring from here. Okay. So speed of light can still remain c. So this was, I don't want to spend too much time on this. Theory of relativity is not in the syllabus for JEE, but it is interesting, so I told you. You can check it out, but it's not necessary right now. So I just wanted to mention was that Einstein chose electromagnetism. He trusted electromagnetism more than even Newton's mechanics. Okay, that is how he figured out theory of relativity. So Maxwell's equations of electromagnetism are beautiful and correct. There is no doubt about it. So now scientists have a problem now. After Rutherford's experiment, they are like, okay, Maxwell's equations are supposed to be right, and now how to explain that atoms are stable, right? How do we explain that atoms are stable? According to Maxwell's equation, they should be losing energy and electrons should be collapsing into the nucleus, right?
Yeah.
So in comes Niels Bohr. Niels Bohr in 1913 proposed his Bohr's model. Okay. Now he proposed 3-4 postulates in Bohr's model, and at first glance it feels like a cop out, like in the sense that he has just ignored all the problems that Rutherford faced, and he just said, okay, this is how it happens, and that's it. No explanation given, nothing. So what he says is, nucleus is there, electrons are moving in orbits, electrons are moving in orbits like this, okay, and electrons are moving in orbits. The orbits have predefined energy levels. Orbits have definite energy levels, and electrons can only exist in the orbits. Electrons can only populate some orbits. N is equal to 1, N is equal to 2. Can only exist in these orbits. Okay. These orbits, they cannot exist basically in the middle. Okay. It cannot be here. Electron can only go to some predefined orbits. Okay. Now, what he said, which is surprising and feels like, what is this, right? This seems totally unfair on Rutherford, because he says that as long as you are in an orbit, as long as you are in an orbit, in a particular orbit, you don't radiate energy. So in his theory itself, he is saying that as long as you are in an orbit, Maxwell's equations don't apply. Don't worry about Maxwell. So Rutherford was worried. Okay, my theory is not being able to explain it. What do I do and all? And Niels Bohr is saying that as long as you're in orbit, don't worry about it. You don't lose energy. I will just switch off Maxwell for a bit. You understand? So there is no explanation here. No, this is like just saying, oh, I will not lose energy. Then it's fine, right? And then he says, angular momentum, this idea of angular momentum, you will learn soon in physics. In chapter 10 of HCV, it's there. So don't worry about this thing. Just remember MVR is angular momentum. We will learn it soon. Angular momentum is equal to NH by 2 pi, where N is the orbit number. This is N is equal to 1, N is equal to 2, and so on, right? So In each orbit, angular momentum will take a definite value, which will be, say, first orbit angular momentum will be 1h by 2 pi. Second orbit it will be 2h by 2 pi. Third orbit it will be 3h by 2 pi, and so on, right? So this is something new. This is something new that he has contributed here. And fourth thing that he's saying, which Rutherford also said, was why is electron moving around the nucleus? Because nucleus has positive Ze charge, right? An electron has negative Ze charge, negative E charge, correct?
Yeah.
So there is an attractive force between positive and negative forces, positive and negative charges, right? So force of attraction between the basically nucleus is pulling the electrons towards itself, and that is why it is accelerating. You understand? F is equal to m into v square by r. The force of attraction between them is causing the acceleration. See, again, this is something that you will understand when you do physics of circular motion. So we will do all of this very soon. Rahul will do all of this soon. So circular motion, when you go in around a circle with a constant velocity, you will face an acceleration of v square by r towards the center, right? So this you might not know right now. Centripetal acceleration, have you ever heard of?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you go around in a circle, earlier I had said qualitatively that your velocity is changing direction, no, every moment.
Yeah.
Right? See, here the velocity was like this, then here velocity is like this, right? How did you manage to turn the direction of the electron's velocity, right? That is the question, right? So if your velocity has changed direction, who caused it to change direction? Some force must have caused that change in velocity, no?
Yeah.
Change in velocity is basically acceleration, right?
Yeah.
So who caused this acceleration? There must be some force, right? F is equal to ma. Right? So people figured out that this acceleration is v square by r. V square is its velocity, r is its radius. Okay. And this acceleration is towards the center. Because the acceleration is towards the center, that's why the electron is turning around and it's going to keep moving in a circle. Think about taking a stone, tying it to a string, and whirling it around yourself, right? Correct. If at any moment you stop applying the force on the string, the stone will go straight off in the tangential direction, no?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So constantly you have to hold the strings tightly, no? Otherwise it will fly off, right?
Yeah.
And when you're holding the string tightly, you're pulling it in which direction? Towards you, right?
Yeah.
Everyone is understanding. There is a stone.
Yeah.
There is a stone like this, and you are rotating it in a circle, suppose, right? So which direction are you pulling the stone? Like this, right?
Yeah.
That is why the stone is not going off like this, and it is being turned and moving in a circle, right? So this point, if you understand, then you can sort of believe that force is towards the center and acceleration is towards the center. So F is equal to mv square by r. This is the acceleration. And F, force of attraction, is by Coulomb's law, you would have heard of. Unlike charges attract each other, right?
Yeah.
So Coulomb's law is K Q1 Q2 by R square. So K Q1 Q2 by R square is equal to mv square by r. Q1 is charged on this, so you can write it as K Z E into E by R square is equal to mv square by r. Okay. So these are the four things that Bohr said. The orbits have definite energy levels. Electrons can only exist in these orbits. Then second thing is very weird, because he's just saying that Maxwell's laws will not apply here and no loss of energy will happen. Third thing is new and interesting. Angular momentum will be in definite levels. So mvr will be nh by 2 pi. First energy level, it will be h by 2 pi, then 2h by 2 pi, then 3h by 2 pi, and so on. And fourth thing is the same thing that Rutherford said. Basically, Rutherford said this and this. 1 and 4 was Rutherford already knew this, and everyone knew this. 1 and 4. That if your electron is moving around because it is pulled by the nucleus, right? It's moving in a circle because of this. So this part was known stuff. 1 was also known stuff. Now, the only thing that he has added is this angular momentum stuff nobody has predicted. And the second point, he had the audacity to say that Maxwell's laws will not apply here. Okay. So that is correct, because some new set of laws will apply now. Okay. So Maxwell's laws is correct in general, but in this particular case, quantum mechanics is what is applying. So when you have subatomic particles which are moving at fast speeds and subatomic tiny particles, the physics that applies is quantum mechanics, and this is the beginning of quantum mechanics. Like this prediction that subatomic particles will not behave like what we expect normal charged particles to behave like. Okay. So you would have expected it to behave like Maxwell's law, but here the same physics will not hold. This prediction and this theory is the beginning of the quantum mechanics thing. And quantum mechanics is also has also been proven to be correct over the last 100 years or so, and there is no doubt that it is correct. And people figured out that from quantum mechanics you can get electromagnetism and Newtonian mechanics and everything, quantum mechanics and Newton's mechanics in different scales. So what I mean by that is physics operates at different levels. Okay. So what happens is at the subatomic level, quantum mechanics dominates. Okay. And actually quantum mechanics and QM, this is the correct theory for every level of physics. By levels I mean subatomic level means sizes are really small, tiny sizes, 10 power minus 10 and so on, meters, right? And at larger sizes, quantum mechanics becomes equal to Newton's mechanics. Okay. Like the theory of quantum mechanics is correct and it is valid, but Newton's mechanics is simpler when you do larger sizes. You can just do Newton's stuff and it will be correct because quantum mechanics turns into Newton's mechanics. Okay. And when you think of charged particles, quantum mechanics predicts everything about electromagnetism. It's just that tiny charged particles, Maxwell's laws is not appropriate. You have to do quantum mechanics there. Okay. Like bulk charged particles, you will be able to predict using electromagnetism, Maxwell's law. Okay. So the point is that this is the more correct theory. Okay. Right now, there is relativity also. Relativity, you have probably heard of that relativity and Newton mechanics are going to be the same. When relativity, for example, is valid when velocities are very high.
Yeah.
Close to the speed of light. If you are traveling at close to the speed of light, then length contraction and time dilation will happen and things will be weird. But when velocity is much less than speed of light, then all the relativistic formulas are same as Newton's formulas. So this is another example of how two different theories can blend into each other or become the same theory in certain scales, right? At certain level, it will become the same thing. At a certain size, it is quantum mechanics. When tiny things are there, it's quantum mechanics. When bulk things are there, it is all of this. When very fast speeds are there, it is relativity. When slow speeds are there, it's the same as Newton's law, right? So that is the nature in which physics operates. So now, how do we get to quantum mechanics now? Before we do that, a little bit of Bohr model. We'll do that in the next call. Okay, just join the next call as well. Okay, I'll just end this. Okay.